but ain't broke.
Recording in progress. Everybody, keep your fingers crossed.
Okay, nobody do anything. I'm not touching a single setting.
Yeah, nobody do anything. That's the instruction you need for a half-hour podcast. Hello, listeners at home. Today's recording may include some strong language and adult content. In fact, I'm pretty sure it will. I've got a couple of guests who I consider both to be particularly highbrow, but we're going to find out who's more highbrow than the other, I think, today. Welcome to Comic Cuts, the panel show. My name's Kev F Sutherland. You might know me as a writer and artist for the Beano, Marvel Comics, Oink, Doctor Who, the Scottish falsetto sock puppet theatre, and my graphic novel adaptations of Shakespeare, but the chances are you probably don't. And my guests competing for highbrow guest of the month are Adam Roche and Hannah Berry.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having us.
Thank you for nice to be here.
Did you make a sound there, Hannah?
I did. I think our technical issues might have returned.
That's okay. We've got an entertaining delay. Hooray!
Oh no, I just look like I'm very, slow in response, slow on the draw.
Talking of things that are a little bit behind the times, I'm going to do the theme tune. Brace yourselves. Comic Cuts. We're looking at a panel, and we comprise a panel. There's a few of us, so the panel sees a panel, and we talk about the comics from the panel we discuss, and we call it Comic Cuts.
I didn't realise you did it live.
Very few people do.
I thought you just dropped it in. I'm so impressed. I can't believe
You're live every time.
I don't know, A, why anybody's impressed, and B, why I don't just drop it in.
I've listened to a few of these shows, and I was like, wow, that's such a good theme tune. That's actually the best theme tune in podcasting, by the way. I didn't realise you did it live, so it just magnifies the magnificence.
That's going on the poster. I have two guests with me today who brought with them a panel from a comic or something close. We're going to see if we can identify it and talk about it. Maybe we and you will learn something about comics we didn't already know, or maybe we'll just show off a bit and have an enjoyable chat. Let's see. Joining me from rural Berkshire, Adam Roche. Hello, Adam.
Hello, how are you? You're right, Kev. So good to meet you at last.
It's great to meet you. Now, listener, if you've not listened to The Secret History of Hollywood, that was essentially my introduction to podcasts, or rather what podcasts could do, rather than just being some blokes in a shed having a chat. Because I was embarking on a long car drive. I know this will sound a little bit Alan Partridge, but I was driving maybe 2 hours there, 2 hours back, slightly longer. And people had recommended podcasts. And I was going, oh, whittle, 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 wattle, wattle, wattle. And then I put this next one on and I thought, oh, I see. This is authoritative. He's talking about the secret history of Hollywood. Oh, he's written this. It's scripted. Okay, well, in half an hour, I'll have to change to another program, but that's fine. I did the 2 hour drive and Adam was still talking about universal monsters, about Frankenstein and Dracula and the 1930s movies. I did the return journey later that day, another 2 hours plus. And that first episode of the podcast was still going when I got home. 4.5 hours long, the episode. I can't believe it. How do you do it?
Wow.
It was, well, that one is actually 7.5 hours long. So it would have done you another trip up the motorway.
Oh, it did. I drove to Scotland listening to yours. Secret History of Hollywood. You did Alfred Hitchcock, and that's over 20 hours of podcast. Am I right?
Yeah, in 3 episodes. I did 5, it's 5, 6, and 9.5 or something.
9.5.
Yeah, 9.5 was the last one.
Must be intense.
How many takes? How many takes does a 9.5 hour monologue take?
Well, I tend to do them in one go. So that one, I think I started about 6 in the morning and finished about 8 at night. And then, it took about 2 weeks to edit that one. You say, like, God, it's 4.5 hours. It's really long. The last episode I released was the first part of my new series on Cary Grant. And that edited was 12 hours, 42 minutes, just that one episode. So that's like, I think that's got to be the record for the longest podcast out there. But saying that, I've just finished writing part 2 of that series. It's taken me 10 months to write that one. And I was looking through it last night, and I think I'm estimating it's going to be about 17 hours just for that one episode.
I mean, these
I'm
are
trying not to make them very long.
Well, they're incredible.
I have a start point and an end point in mind, and I write till I get there, and I go, well, that took me almost a year, and then I record it. And I find that they just keep going along.
Well, I suppose the odd thing is that they have started life as broadcasts, whereas really they are, and the content is, listener, if you've not listened to them, you must listen to them, the most authoritative written work on these subjects. Universal Monsters, I have still not found a book that covers the territory that you covered in your extensive podcast. Similarly, Dalton Trumbo and the Hollywood 10 and the struggles to remember all the ones. Well, you
the Warner Brothers.
The Warner Brothers with James Cagney mashed together, and well. And Walt Disney, he's in the Dalton Trumbo. But because you managed to conflate all these various parallel storylines, you've covered so much territory. They're massive tomes in themselves. Are they printed yet?
Well, some of them I've turned into ebooks. The last series I did, I just finished, was Shadows. That was the story of Val Luton. That took 3 years to finish. Yes. And that's 11 parts. They varied in length between 2 hours and 6 hours, but they were sort of supposed to be smaller. But when you put them together, I think they were about 36 hours for the whole series. But that has just been optioned for a movie. So that's on its way to the screen. And I'm writing that. So it was going to be, I was going to turn it into a book, because literally the research I did for that one was, it's never been done before. You know, I had a friend at the Library of Congress, and she pulled all of his letters that have never even been catalogued. And we went through it all, and poems to his wife, you know, sonnets he wrote on weekends, private letters, all his family correspondence and everything. I mean, half of the books you get on Val Luton are just like pamphlets, really. They go, he did this movie, then this movie, then this movie, and you don't ever get a sense of who he really was. You just have to guess from looking at the films. But for the first time, I was able to, you know, give him a soul. And,
yes.
Well,
your research on Val Luton, and I had not come across books about Val Luton at all. And because he's a producer, producers don't get written about in the same way as directors and actors at all, do
right,
they?
Yeah.
But you got right into his childhood, and indeed his family's history before that.
Yeah. I was just finished the Warner Brothers series, and I happened to get in touch with Mark Gatiss, who was had listened to the Hitchcock series and the Sherlock Holmes series I made, and he was like, you know, have you ever thought about doing Val Luton? And I was like, that's a good idea, because, you know, he's not a director, you know, he's not, you know, one of these people that is generally known really that much. So I said, would you want to be involved if I did? And he was like, yes. So we worked on these folk tales that inspired each movie. So Mark reads the folk tale at the beginning of the story of each episode that inspires the film about, you know, the episode's about, kind of thing. And yeah, so it was really Mark Gates's idea to do Val Luton, but I'm very glad he did.
He's not here. Take credit. Take the credit.
Well, listener at home, you can tell from the work we've just been discussing that we're dealing with a pretty highbrow participant on that side of the screen.
I'm about to undo it all.
Wait, just one cotton picking moment, because I have with me a laureate, Hannah Berry, comics laureate.
I'm not laureate anymore.
Oh, ex-laureate.
I'm done. It's over.
Isn't it like being a president? Aren't you comics laureate emeritus?
I will refer to myself as laureate forever, of course, but it's technically and officially done.
What did a laureate have to do when she was doing it?
Oh, swan about mostly. I got a cape, got to wear it down Sainsbury's. You know, mostly sort of opening supermarkets, that kind of thing. A lot of time in the supermarket, apparently.
Well, also you did a fair bit of research, because you did a survey of the UK comic creators that it never been. Nobody asked comic creators anything before.
Yeah, well, I thought we'd. So I think what a laureate was supposed to do is to do more outreach things, but unfortunately the first half of my laureateship I had a small child, so I was mostly behind my desk making plans for the second half of my laureateship, which there was then, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was this disease that has been around, so all of my plans to go out and actually do things were nope. So instead I decided to stay behind my desk and conduct a big survey of comics creators in the UK to find out how we're doing, and then what we need to do better and survive. And maybe we can give this data to people that fund the arts and say, look, we're making art. We clearly need funding. Fund this, please.
Well, I participated in this, and I was a recipient of the various graphs and pie charts that came with it. What were the conclusions?
Bad.
As somebody who works in the comics industry, it's always bad.
It's always bad. We've always talked about how bad it is, but now we have categorical proof that it is quite bad. I mean, not for everybody. I think there are some people who are doing okay. There's a I think 5% of people who are making big bucks, but the majority of people making comics, I think 87% of creators, this is off the top of my head, so this might not be accurate, but no one can refute this at the moment. So I'm going to say 87% of creators have another job to support their comics creating. So, I mean, we could be doing better. But I think the thing that came out, which was kind of lovely, was that everybody loves comics. Everyone's really enthusiastic about comics, and that's why people make comics, because they love comics.
Well,
we're not doing it for the big bucks. Well, and also the big bucks would be nice, but that's not why we're doing it.
Well, also, you were able to bring people together. You did a number of Zoom conferences, which we've all discovered in the last year if we didn't already discover Zoom, and brought people together. I think we did more networking on a comics basis than would happen in a normal year, largely thanks to you. The Society of Authors now has a comics creators network.
Comics creators network. So if there's any issues, we've finally got a union, really. So if there's any issues that you need to address, any sort of legal issues, any professional issues, you can run it to them, and or we, because I'm on the steering committee. I'm not a professional in that respect. I mean, I can't vet a contract. You don't want my expertise.
I hasten to add, you're actually a professional within comics. It does sound like you're an administrator who have invited on because of their secretarial skills, and you're brilliant with the pie chart.
I'm very good at typing. I used to be an administrator before all of this, and that's pretty good. Oh, I could file a file, let me tell you.
And you could open a supermarket as well.
And open a supermarket.
And wield scissors. but you've been selected at Angoulême. Now, listener at home, if you're not au fait with Angoulême, the comic festival, it is the biggest deal probably in the world, certainly as far as taking the comics seriously rather than just having lots of film stars swanning around, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's like the Cannes of the Cannes Festival of comics. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's CANNES, listener at home, not just a can with some comics in.
It's like the Cannes Festival in France.
Yeah, because they really do take, because you were translated into French, which would be why you were a selection at Angoulême.
Yes, yeah. So my first book was Written and Lightly, available all good retailers. It was translated into French, and the French edition was part of the official selection at Angoulême, and that's the first time I ever went to Angoulême, and my God, that was eye-opening. That was because I'd only been to conventions in the UK before then, and this is quite a while ago now. This is in 2010, so things have obviously a lot has changed since then, but it was amazing seeing comics creators treated like film stars. There was a point where I don't know how you say his name. Enki Bilal?
I'd say Onki,
Bilal.
but
Onki? Bilal. Mr. Bilal was walking across the room, followed by his entourage, and trotting after him the Minister of Culture. It was a sight to behold. It's just another world.
Yeah, their attitude.
We found out since that they're not doing so great either, but there's prestige there where there's not here.
It's all relative, and yes, the respect they give to the ninth art is a very different matter. Hey, tell you what, we've got highbrow. Let's stay highbrow. Now, I've got two guests who brought panels with them that we're going to look at. You should be able to see these on my website, kevfcomicartist.com, or on the holding artwork for this episode of the podcast, depending where you get your podcasts from. But you know what? You shouldn't need to see these pictures because of the great job we're going to do describing them. I said highbrow. I flipped a coin, and we're going to begin with Adam's selection, which I'm going to share to the screen now.
Okay, I'm ready.
I apologize in advance.
Can we all see that?
I'm sorry, I was so close to sending you a poo panel.
Well, now listener, you can't see this. You might be able to gauge to some degree the type of thing we're looking at, because, well, we're going to have to try and describe it. No, I say we, Hannah. You're going to have to try and describe without guessing where it's from yet. Paint a picture with words. Yes.
So there's a man with a swastika on his shirt. He's got his trousers down, his bum out, and he's standing with his feet in a bucket of pig shit on a stage. There's lots of people looking behind him, and he's saying, oh yes, I can feel it coming out now. Go on, fuck off out of it, you blasted queen.
And don't forget, the Queen is visible. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II is visible in the top left-hand corner. As the curtains part, the Queen is in the royal box. So this is a royal variety performance for the panelologists at home that study line composition and this sort of thing. This is a pen and probably brush or pen. Anyway, it's an ink black and white drawing intended to be seen in black and white. It's a square frame, probably quite small on the page. I say that because I know what kind of page it's from. And it depicts exactly what Hannah said, this spiky-haired, cartoonily faced character with a swastika, bare arse, in the pig shit, swearing at the Queen, but with his back turned to the Queen.
Is he knocking one out, or is he having a poo?
He is knocking one out.
Oh, I'm so naive, you see, I just didn't know.
He's knocking a very specific thing out.
Okay, Hannah, would you like to guess what comic this is from?
Well, I mean, I would say it's Bunty, circa 1978.
I think you spelled that word wrong.
My rather disappointing guess would be that it's the artwork of Davy Jones. And in fact, you can see little initials at the top of the picture which say GPD STDS, and that's Graham Dury, Simon Thorpe, and Davy Jones. Davy Jones has drawn it. Simon and Graham have written it along with Davy, and it's from Viz Comic. Adam, can you tell us more about what story in Viz this is from?
Sorry.
You've gone silent with shame.
This is my favorite comic strip ever. Only because it's it's from issue number 86 from 1997 in Viz. I didn't realize comics like this existed in the world when I was that age, and I remember reading this comic strip. It's called There Goes My Knighthood, starring Donald Sinden. And I can honestly say, to this day, I can read it and I can't get through it without just losing my mind. It's so funny. It basically begins with Donald Sinden in a suit, and he's on his way to the palace because he's about to pick up his knighthood, and a fly lands on his shoe. So he says, well, the Queen can't possibly give me my knighthood when I've got fly footprints all over my shoe. So he tries to get rid of the shoe and ends up making himself more disheveled. Then all of a sudden down the street walks the Queen. So he says, well, I can't look like this in front of the Queen. So he dives into a bin, hence the fish bones and banana peels you can see in his hair there, and ends up rolling down the road. He gets out, he goes into a laundrette, takes off his clothes, and then spots the Queen coming again. So he has to jump into one of the tumble dryers, which gets switched on, and then the Queen walks past. But when he gets out, his clothes have been destroyed. The only clothes they can give him are a Nazi t-shirt. Anyway, escalates. He jumps over a wall to avoid the Queen, lands in a bucket of pig shit. He goes on and on and on, and this bee won't leave him alone all the way through, and he ends up hopping through a door to avoid the Queen, and not realizing it's a theatre. And at that very moment, the bee flies into his penis, and he has no alternative.
We've all been there.
The stagehand that's nearby says, "You'll have to wank it out." So he has to wank out the bee, which is the thing you're seeing in this picture. And as he shall we say ejects the bee along with his bodily fluids, the curtains swing open and he realizes he's at the Royal Variety performance in a Nazi t-shirt, stood in a bucket of pig shit, having just ejaculated onto the stage, and the bee just flies, drunkly off. And he turns to the crowd and says, "Well, there goes my knighthood." Oh my God, it's so wrong, and I'm so sorry for bringing it. But when you said, I'm not a connoisseur, as you can tell, but when you said, "Give me a comic strip you love," I have to say this one has followed me throughout life, and I adore it.
This is the single most entertaining comic strip that we have yet had on the
follow
show.
this. How am I supposed to follow this? Come on now.
I'm actually dizzy with laughter at this. But that was Viz. Viz made you laugh. I had been reading comics since I was a kid, and loads of them were supposed to be funny. Viz was the first thing that was ever actually funny. Something like this, laugh out loud, funny. And then you've got Roger's Profanosaurus next to it. Sweary kid, sweary Mary, top
tips were just genius. You know, if your vibrator's broken, just fill a cigar tube with angry wasps. Oh God, those guys are just so funny. I mean, so wrong. I mean, you wouldn't ever build a collection at that point. You wouldn't be proud to do it, but my God, they were funny.
I think there's quite a lot of people that have.
What Cleopatra did.
Well, built the collection out of Viz.
No, yeah.
Is that what Cleopatra's needle is?
Big Viz fan. All over if you look inside the pyramids, just Viz wall to wall. No, didn't she fill a tube with bees?
Oh, really?
I'm sure I read that somewhere. That was
historical fact.
Historically accurate.
It turns out all the people in Viz were actually really good classical researchers.
Yeah, they just got all their top tips from moments in history.
The other amazing thing about Viz is that it doesn't translate, does it? I mean, it translates to reading out like this. This is perfect. And so many people, I've heard Viz quoted more often on highfalutin chat shows on Channel 4 and Radio 4, especially when it was at its peak. I remember Richard E. Grant making Jonathan Ross collapse with laughter and a mutual discussion about Johnny Fart Pants. And but it doesn't translate. Have you ever seen the animations they've made? They did a claymation version of the Fat Slags. They did cell animation of Roger Melly, the Man on the Telly, which featured Peter Cook does one of the voices. I know
Harry Enfield,
Harry Enfield did voices. Jimmy Nail did Sid the Sexist, and they lose whatever magic they had somehow.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I used to have those videos. I quite like the Roger Melly one because I enjoyed seeing the Jimmy Tarbrush and Bruce Fivesith golf tournament thing, and when he smacked Bruce Fivesith with the golf club, I found that particularly satisfying. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, they were meant for, you know, sort of round the back of the bike sheds. Look at this, boys. Kind of, they're that kind of shared humor thing. You don't really want it. You don't need it on TV.
Well, that's the great thing, isn't it? If you entertain yourself and a small group of friends, that's sometimes the best. For many people, you know, doing this sort of stuff at school, that would be where it'd end. But this managed to carry it over flukily. I mean, I was one of the people who then was involved in the Viz lookalike mags. I was doing things called Gag and Cack and Bloody Hell. And
I do remember that. Yeah.
Astonishingly, they only sold a tenth of what Viz sold. Of course, when Viz sold 1 million, selling a tenth of that was pretty good. When Viz would go down to maybe 150,000, selling a tenth of that was not such good business. But yeah, it was an amazing, well, it remains an amazing phenomenon. There's nothing like it. Hannah, what do you think they'd make of it in Angoulême?
Oh, poo-poo it, probably.
We've already done that in this picture.
I've been there. I've only been there twice. I'm not an expert.
They need to introduce it on stage with this very panel. You know, someone needs to reenact this at Angoulême.
Yeah, this would be the breakthrough. This is what would. I can't believe I forgot about Viz. I can't believe I didn't get this was Viz. What a almighty brain fart.
I can picture this at Angoulême. They would blow this 100 feet high and put it on the side of a cathedral. That's what they do.
The Minister of Culture there. Yes, good line work.
Well, there was actually an exhibition of Viz sculpture. I had mistaken it for being
Viz
particularly
sculpture?
serious art. Viz, the actual team, had an exhibition in London. It was at the time of the Sensation exhibition, and so they did things which were actually parodies of Damien Hirst and parodies of Tracy Emin and other famous works. But they did them with the fat slags, and I think there was a fat slag chopped in half and put in a tank. But they did them as sculpture. They a lot of money went into this because there was a lot of money bouncing around in Viz and the world at the time. And it turns out they were sort of doing it as a jokey piss take, and they weren't actually that serious about the art. I, however, being pretentious, was and thought that they were too. You see what you want to see sometimes with this stuff, don't you?
Yeah, it definitely reflects my sense of humor. Yeah, not you know, I don't wear Nazi t-shirts and masturbate in front of the Queen, but I do well, try not to. Yeah,
it's the only reason we had you on.
Wankgate. No, so I remember like growing up in the 80s and 90s when like you still had all those British sitcoms on. Never the Twain, May to December, all those, you know, kind of Mulberry, all those kinds of things that I remember so vividly from my youth. So I remember being, you know, quite young when this strip came out, and just really knowing who Donald Sinden was. For them to have picked Donald Sinden, it's, I think, is genius. They really were very clever at picking the right people in culture at the time and just lampooning them. Donald Sinden, there goes my knighthood. I love it.
Memorialized, immortalized, immortalized.
Fantastic. Well,
lives on longer than him.
Well, listeners, we've had a look at the highbrow suggestion. Now, some of us are in the gutter looking up at this. We're looking now at what Hannah has brought in, and listener at home, you'll be able to see this on the website. You'll be able to see it on the holding image for the episode, wherever you get your podcasts from. But now do stop tittering, everybody, because Adam, it now falls to you to describe what we're looking at.
Right. Okay. So we've got 6 pictures. Sorry if I'm referring to them in the wrong way. But you have a bird's nest, and the chicks are chirping, and there seems to be some kind of small human in amongst them, and the mother has come back to drop a bug into the mouth chicks. She drops one into the first chick's mouth and then goes in to go to the small human, and instead of dropping it into his mouth or her mouth, sticks his head straight down the child's throat and rips out its, I want to say tonsils or something, guts anyway, and produces those for the baby. I can't quite make out what's happening.
Well, I think that's a very fair description. For the benefit of the panelologists at home who study line composition technique and that sort of thing, we're actually not looking at a single panel. We are looking at 6 panels from, that's okay, from the top third of a page. They're in line drawing, I'd say drawn in pen, but then coloured in watercolour. And I would say that it's real watercolour and not digital. The panel borders are actually freehand drawn. They'll have been ruled in pencil, but they've been freehand drawn to give you a sketchy style. And it's a very realistic nature drawing. Birds in the bird's nest are very realistic, but the cartoon child in the bird's nest, who's the size of a very small bird, is very cartoony. When the child opens its mouth is as wide as its entire face. So we're looking at something cartoony, but not quite totally comic. That is to say, we're not looking at Beano and Dandy type of humour. We're looking at something so bittersweet and crossover that I would say we're not looking at something British or American. I would say we're probably looking at something French or European. One of the clues I have there is that the noise the birds are making is pee, 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 written P-I-I-I, and the eyes have got dots on the top as if they're lowercase. And the child is also going P-I-I-I with dots on the top as if they're lowercase. And then when the child throws up, having had its gut pulled out by the bird, it's going R-R-H-H-H sound, very onomatopoeic. But I'm going to guess that it's French. Adam, would you like to have a stab in the dark and guess what kind of comic this could be? Even give it a title.
Nature's Revenge. I'm not sure actually. I have no idea, but everything you were saying there was clicking. It's very, very Pingu in the way that there's no words, it's all sounds, but it could be anything. But yeah, it definitely looks European the more you say it. But I really like it.
I'm going to guess that it's
very
French. And I'm going to guess that the central character is the small child that's ended up in the bird's nest, and it's probably aimed. Knowing the French, they don't say it's aimed towards smaller readers because it won't insult the intelligence of anyone. But it's probably very popular with younger readers. And I'm saying it's called something like Petit Pipi. Hannah, put us out of our misery. What is it?
I'm afraid it's not Petit Pipi. I sound like I'm really I'm a massive francophile now because I've just been talking about France, but you're right, it's French. It's Beautiful Darkness, or Jolie Ténèbres, if you excuse the pronunciation by Veilman and Kerisquet, if you excuse that pronunciation as well. It's this story about I actually was translated into English, but I got it first in French, and I flat out refuse to buy a book twice, so I'll never have it in English. But it's this story about these like little sort of like little fey creatures, the little fairy folk that are all living inside a house, and they're having like a nice tea party, and suddenly their house starts to fall in around them, and they all escape. And it turns out that their house is actually a little girl who's just died in the forest. It is dark as fuck.
Wow.
Sounds it.
Especially the first time I ever read it, I didn't have a child. Now I have a child, and now it's like, oh, this is really this is an unpleasant read now. And so this the house
was a girl. Did you say?
Sorry.
The house was a girl. Did you say?
Yeah, the house is a little girl that has just died in the forest.
Right. So it's like the numbskulls almost, kind of.
The numbskulls in a corpse.
Yeah. It's not quite numbskulls because you never see them like inside the little girl when she's alive. It's not like they're controlling her, what she says and or sees, or responding to that. They're just in there having a tea party, and then the house starts to decay, and they flee. And it's about the stories about these little creatures that are living. They're trying to make their way in this lovingly rendered forest beside the decaying corpse of a girl that's just been murdered. And it's like the whole thing is like it's really sweet. It's really sort of twee, and there's a lot of whimsy. It's all about the main character is in love with this guy, but then this guy sort of goes off with this other girl who's like a sort of a princess, and all the other characters love her. But it's so dark and it's so brutal. This little character here is just like a little throwaway character who I think she's one of 3, and this is the last time you see her. You just assume, I guess, she's dead now. And all the other characters, the other little characters, just sort of meet these really grisly ends as this story goes on. And I think that I should have reread this before this, but I think there's only one character, like only the central character survives in the house of the man who is suggested murdered this little girl. And it's just a horrifying glimpse of whimsy and brutality that is life. And there we go. Amazing. There we go. That's it.
That's just fantastic. This is the sort of things you can do in comics. What I've always said is that comics, as far as the film and TV business is concerned, we are the cheap wing of research and development, because we can do things and make them look as full and complete as a finished movie, but it hardly costs you a thing. So the imagination, I think, has been able to go wilder more often in comics, or BD in this case, than in any other art form.
Yeah, for sure. I really think that I was reading recently that I think, is it Netflix that are, or no, it's Sky that are supporting the theatre in the UK. It's like, well, Netflix needs to be supporting us in comics, recovering from COVID, because we're churning out this material here.
Well, yeah, a lot of stuff getting adapted. I didn't mean to turn this to the subject of adaptation.
Oh, we're on it now.
but yeah, we seem to be really providing the fodder, because we're visual. That's it. Comic books, they do a lot of the design work as well as the storytelling. And
yeah, proof in concept, I think, is the phrase.
Exactly. And they tap into a youthful mindset, I think, more than perhaps the literary world does so often.
Yeah, I think you could be right. I mean, certainly with this one.
Well, because when I was guessing at this, I was thinking that this was child orientated, and then realizing that's a thing that they do in book publishing in this country. They tell you what age group things are for. When you try and pitch a piece of work, they say, who's the audience for? I'm not sure if that would have happened with this book, would it?
I don't think it would. I mean, it's definitely aimed at. I think it's aimed at. Well, no, I don't think they would.
I don't think you think like that.
I've got the book here. I can just in case anybody was going to ask me questions about it. I don't know if it's. There's nothing on it that says that it's aimed at kids. It's not like. No, it's not like Depuis Enfant. There's nothing like that.
I don't think the French BD publishing world works in that way. I think they have such respect for the work and such respect for the content that it stands on its own 2 feet. And I think they take a lot of these things to be self-evident, as we did once upon a time. I remember us being very scornful about the Americans having this comics code authority, because we, of course, had 2000 AD, where we were doing really advanced and sophisticated stuff that the Americans wouldn't dare do, because we didn't discriminate between the ages. We do now because there's no comics for anybody. But we've really successfully discriminated. We've eliminated all comics apart from Viz and the Beano. So that's it. Stop reading at 8.
We'll get those 2.
Start reading again when you can read it.
Don't get them mixed up.
No comics for anybody.
But they do take the work. It's not taking the work seriously. It's allowing the work to be the work, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love this. I love this strip. By the way, I think it's great. I'm definitely going to seek that book out.
I came so close to choosing a strip with poo in. What should I have now?
No, I'd far rather you had a bird sticking its beak down the throat of a small child who lives inside the corpse of another small child.
Murdered girl. Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's a little brat. They're all horrible, horrible characters that die. I should say, like, all of them, even the main character, they're just really spoiled little bratty, disgusting creatures.
This must be very gratifying to read.
Yeah, it's a good one.
To an extent, these, I think, are all morality tales. Donald Sinden losing his knighthood, and the people who live inside the dead body of a murdered child getting their comeuppance.
I mean, I've certainly learned something from listening to these 2 tales. I've grown as a person.
Well, I think comeuppance describes both.
On which bombshell? Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Hannah. We have been looking at Donald Sinden losing his knighthood in a strip by Davy Jones and the team from Viz Comic. And we've been looking at, was it Pretty Darkness, aka Jolie Ténèbres?
It was Beautiful Darkness. I think it's Drawn and Quarterly did the English one, if anybody wants it.
Am I right that they're Failman and Co-Square?
Kara Sweat, which is 2 people. I don't know their real names.
Here's me trying to write down what you say, not pausing to ask you again
well,
who
also
they were.
Mumble at high speed, so I'm amazed you got even that, frankly.
Listener at home, have fun trying to Google the titles of all of these works, especially just put in Donald Sinden wanking. We'll know what you mean. If you've got any questions, you can find us on our various social media. Adam, where would we find you?
On Twitter, I'm on @MovieHistories, and my personal one is @AudioJoe. The others aren't worth bothering with. My website is www.secrethistoryofhollywood.com.
And also check out Attaboy Clarence, everybody.
Oh,
and Hannah, where do we find you on the socials?
On the socials, I'm @StreakOfPith, PITH, on Twitter and Instagram. And I'm hannahberry.co.uk, just on the regular internet. And if anybody wants to know anything more about that depressing our survey, it's hannahberry.co.uk/survey. And just have a good old read and a cry.
A good old read and a cry. Well, you have been enjoying the most highbrow episode so far of Comic Cuts. I'm on Twitter at Kev F Comic Artist and at Kev F Comic and at kevfcomicartist.com. Please click subscribe to be sure of hearing every episode when it comes out, and leave us a review, why don't you? Thanks again to Adam Roche and Hannah Berry, and to you at home for listening. I've been Kev F, and this has been Comic Cuts, the panel show. And we're out.
Yeah.
Amazing. That was great fun.
That was fantastic fun. Thank you. I have enjoyed that more than any recording.
Oh,
yeah.
we
Fuck it,
succeeded.
other subjects? No, what am I saying? Guests in your faces.
Well,
always bring an amateur.
Potential guests to come include Simon Donald and Alex Collier from Viz. So I shall be able to tell them that their work wasn't chosen. We've chosen the work of the other 3 guys from Viz, not those 2 who I know. So brilliant. Thank you, Adam. Lovely to meet
I didn't
you.
recognise that.
You
That's
too.
really mortifying.
Well, let's all get back into our Viz libraries and indulge. I'll let you go, guys.
Okay, have a great.
That episode will be in August sometime.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to drop me your email on Twitter and I'll send this over to you?
I shall do that very thing.
Oh, I've managed
Thank
to
you.
record as well. Should I send that?
Oh, you managed to record? Yes, please.
Yeah, at least the last 32 minutes.
Yeah, that'd be
Send it.
great. That'd be fabulous. Thank you
Cool.
both.
Cool.
Please.
Bye bye.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Bye.